At Bagram Air Base in 2003, Captain Kim Campbell took anti-aircraft fire over Baghdad that punched hundreds of holes through her aircraft and destroyed both hydraulic systems simultaneously. She had no fluid pressure, no powered flight controls, and a ground war beneath her demanding she bring the aircraft home. She fought the stick manually for 1 hour and landed. The aircraft that made that possible was designed in 1972. It is still flying today, and the United States Air Force has been trying to retire it for a decade. Congress keeps saying no. Before we dive in, comment where you are watching from and click subscribe. The A-10 Thunderbolt II exists because of a specific problem that emerged from Vietnam. Fast jets were arriving over battlefields, spending seconds on target, dropping ordnance with marginal precision, and leaving before anyone on the ground could tell them the situation had changed. Troops in contact needed something different. They needed an aircraft that could slow down, stay close, and absorb the punishment that comes with flying low over people actively trying to shoot it down. The engineers at Fairchild Republic did not design an aircraft and then add survivability features. They designed survivability as the primary constraint and built an aircraft around it. Every compromise the A-10 makes in speed, in altitude, in radar cross-section exists because those compromises bought something more important: the ability to absorb catastrophic damage and keep flying until the mission is complete. Understanding the A-10 begins with the weapon it was built to carry. The GAU-8 Avenger is a 7-barrel 30mm rotary cannon stretching over 19 feet from breech to muzzle. The gun system, including its ammunition drum fully loaded, weighs just over 4,000 pounds, roughly 16% of the aircraft's empty weight. The mass distribution of the entire airframe assumes the weapon is always present. Remove it for maintenance and the aircraft tips backward onto its tail. Ground crews install a jack stand under the rear fuselage before disconnecting anything from the gun mounting. What this means structurally is that the A-10 is not an aircraft that carries a gun. It is a gun delivery system that happens to have wings and engines attached. Every other design decision flows from that premise. Getting the gun to the target requires keeping the engines alive long enough to get there. The twin General Electric TF-34 turbofan engines are mounted high on the rear fuselage in separate housings, positioned in a way that looks improvised but was calculated with considerable precision. The aircraft's body sits between the engines and ground fire coming up from below, providing a layer of structural shielding that engine placement under the wings or on the fuselage sides cannot replicate. The exhaust nozzles angle upward, directing infrared signature away from heat-seeking missiles looking up from ground level. A seeker that cannot acquire the heat cannot establish a lock. Beyond survivability, the TF-34 was designed with a priority that seems counterintuitive for a combat aircraft: fuel efficiency over raw power. Each engine produces 9,000 pounds of thrust with a bypass ratio of 6.2 to 1, meaning more than 6 parts of airflow around the hot core for every 1 part flowing through it. Fighter engines typically run ratios between 1 and 1.5. This trades maximum thrust for dramatically improved fuel economy. That trade translates directly into loiter time. The A-10 can orbit a patrol area for nearly 2 hours, while faster jets have already burned to bingo fuel and departed. When troops on the ground call for immediate fire support, they do not need an aircraft that arrives fast and leaves in minutes. They need one that arrives and stays until the threat is gone. Loiter time saves lives in a way that airspeed does not. Those engines face a serious problem from the weapon they are designed to deliver. The GAU-8A produces enormous volumes of combustion gas when it fires, and that gas contains almost no oxygen. Jet engines require a continuous supply of oxygen to sustain combustion. Gun gas flowing into the engine intakes chokes the combustion process and causes flameout. Early flight testing discovered this consequence in the worst possible way, when pilots fired the cannon and both engines flamed out simultaneously during a diving attack run with the ground accelerating toward them. The solution was direct and permanent. The engine igniters are wired to the gun trigger. Every time the pilot fires, the igniters activate automatically, providing continuous reignition capability throughout the burst. If gun gas disrupts combustion in either engine, the system relights before the pilot detects anything abnormal. A potentially fatal problem is resolved faster than human reflexes can register it. The wings of the A-10 look wrong to anyone accustomed to modern combat aircraft. They are straight, wide, and thick where every contemporary design is swept and tapered. That shape is not an oversight. Swept wings trade low-speed handling for high-speed performance. The A-10 requires the opposite trade. The straight wing configuration allows the aircraft to turn tight at 300 knots, fly as slow as 140 knots without stalling, and circle back for a second pass when the first engagement was incomplete. For infantry waiting for close air support, that low-speed maneuverability is the difference between help arriving on target and help overshooting the engagement area entirely. The wings mount low on the fuselage, providing 11 hardpoint stations capable of carrying 16,000 pounds of external weapons. Approximately 95% of the airframe uses aluminum alloy construction, deliberately chosen over composites. Composite materials shatter under impact stress. Aluminum bends, tears, and keeps structural integrity in ways that carbon fiber cannot. Damage that destroys a composite structure leaves holes in this one that the aircraft flies through. Aluminum does not stop a 23mm cannon round at close range. For that, the engineers built what maintenance crews call the bathtub. 1,100 pounds of titanium armor wrap around the cockpit in a continuous shell. Multiple plates ranging from ½ an inch to 1½ inches thick, with the thickness at each position calculated from studies of where enemy fire most commonly concentrates. Thicker where gunfire arrives most frequently, thinner where it rarely comes from, every fraction of an inch earning its weight in protection. This armor is rated to stop 23mm rounds, the caliber fired by Soviet-designed anti-aircraft systems specifically built to destroy low-flying jets. A burst that would shred an F-16 cockpit deflects off the bathtub. Any plate facing the pilot is lined with multi-layer nylon spall shields that capture fragments if a round partially penetrates the outer surface. The difference between those layers and no layers is the difference between bruising and a flag-draped coffin. The bathtub extends beyond the pilot's body to wrap around the flight control linkages as well. Surviving the hit means nothing if the aircraft becomes uncontrollable afterward. The engineers accounted for that specific failure sequence and addressed it in the armor geometry. The fuel system follows the same design philosophy. 4 main tanks cluster near the aircraft's center of gravity rather than distributing through the wings where they present larger targets. Each tank sits inboard of the outer skin with structural space between the tank wall and the fuselage exterior, meaning a projectile must penetrate the aircraft twice before reaching fuel. Even then, the tanks are lined with reticulated polyurethane foam, an open-cell material that catches fragments and prevents fuel from atomizing into flammable mist that fills the fuselage interior. Self-sealing bladders made of vulcanized rubber close around punctures the way soft tissue closes over a wound, swelling on contact with fuel to seal the breach. One-way check valves isolate compromised tanks from the rest of the system the moment pressure drops abnormally. 2 emergency sump tanks holding 230 gallons sit near the aircraft's core, entirely separate from the main fuel system. Even if every primary tank is destroyed, those 230 gallons provide enough fuel to reach friendly airspace rather than ejecting over enemy territory. No other system on the A-10 better illustrates the design philosophy than the flight control redundancy. 2 completely independent hydraulic systems, each with separate pumps, separate fluid reservoirs, and lines routed through different sections of the airframe, power every control surface. A hit that destroys one system leaves the other entirely functional. The pilot notices a gauge reading while the aircraft continues responding normally. The ailerons stretch across nearly half the wingspan, far larger than comparable fighters, providing control authority at the slow speeds where the A-10 operates. They split vertically to function as speed brakes, both halves opening simultaneously above and below the wing to create drag without inducing roll, allowing rapid deceleration for precise weapons delivery. Behind both hydraulic systems sits a third option. A manual reversion backup connects the control stick directly to the surfaces through cables and push rods, requiring no fluid pressure. Switching to manual makes the aircraft significantly harder to fly because the pilot's muscles must overcome the resistance hydraulic systems normally handle. But controllable under maximum physical effort is infinitely preferable to uncontrollable. Captain Kim Campbell proved this in Baghdad in 2003, when ground fire destroyed both hydraulic systems simultaneously. She switched to manual reversion and flew for an hour against control surfaces designed for powered assistance before landing the aircraft intact. No other airframe in the inventory offered her that option. In the targeting run, all of these systems converge into a 30-second sequence. The pilot rolls into a 30-degree dive from 8,000 feet, airspeed building through 300 knots. The continuously computed impact point updating 60 times per second on the heads-up display. This system accounts for altitude, dive angle, airspeed, wind, air density, and 30mm ballistic simultaneously, projecting a moving dot onto the display that shows exactly where rounds will impact if the trigger is pulled at that moment. Put the dot on the target. The rounds go there. At 4,000 feet of slant range, the system achieves 80% accuracy within a 40-foot circle. That precision enables danger-close fire support, engaging enemy positions with friendly troops 200 meters away, 2 football fields, a margin that bombs and rockets with their unpredictable blast radii cannot safely work within. At optimal range, the trigger goes down. Hydraulic motors spin the 7 barrels up to firing speed in half a second. Then the gun fires. 10,000 pounds of recoil shudders through the airframe 65 times per second while both engines push forward against it. The aircraft decelerates against its own thrust during the burst. Rounds leave the centerline barrel at over 3,500 feet per second, reaching the target before sound travels from the muzzle. 2 seconds. 130 rounds into a 40-foot circle. Gun gas washes back across the fuselage. The igniters cycle. The engines stay lit. The pilot pulls out, nose rising above the horizon, throttles forward to recover the speed recoil consumed. On the ground, the impacts arrived in silence. The sound followed. 65 impacts per second blur into a single tearing roar that lasts precisely as long as the burst and stops. Troops who hear that sound know one thing with complete certainty: they are not the target. If they were, they would never hear it. At all. That sound, that 2-second burst, that 40-foot circle, is what every system on this aircraft was built to deliver. The titanium bathtub, the self-sealing tanks, the redundant hydraulics, the engines that relight themselves mid-fire, the manual backup that kept Kim Campbell alive over Baghdad. None of it is elegance. All of it is purpose. And after 50 years of attempts to replace it with something faster, stealthier, and more technologically sophisticated, nothing designed since has been willing to fly as low, absorb as much, and stay as long as the aircraft that Congress keeps refusing to let die.